My Mother, The Person and the Patient is an original podcast written and hosted by me, Fatuma Kuso. This podcast is about my mother, Timira Abdisamed Mohammed, Ayaya we call her. That's the Somali word for grandmother. And her great-grandchildren call her Ayaya too, and that is their way of saying great-grandmother. As soon as I came up with the solution to stop my mother from opening the patio sliding door several times each night and setting the alarm off in the process, I realized those techniques worked at night while I was in the house with her, but they wouldn't work during the day. When my mother is the only person in the house, I couldn't really keep her in the house and cut her access to the patio sliding door off and close the door by the kitchen that cut our bedrooms off from the rest of the house. That wouldn't work because it's not safe for her. What happens if there was a fire and she needed to get out? So I realized soon enough, if I were to go to work and work with peace of mind, I needed to hire somebody to be with my mother during the day. At the same time, I realized my mother's restlessness usually started maybe around 10:30, 11 o'clock, because that was the time when she was well, that she used to go over to friend's house or go for a walk or go to the Y to work out. In the morning, she would wake up, have her coffee and dates, take her time, eat breakfast. But at 10:30, 11 o'clock mark, she would get that restlessness about her because the things she had done by habit, by rote memory, all those years were still there and she wanted to do them. And she didn't really realize her limitations of not being able to do them. So I decided I was going to look for somebody in the community that spoke Somali, somebody that spoke her language, because my mother was still at the time very verbal, liked to talk, liked to socialize, liked to tell stories. So I wanted her to have that, to have a company during the day, and at the same time somebody who could be with her without making her feel like they're watching her. Right, somebody who spoke her language, they could talk, they're like kind of like close in age maybe, and they are hanging out. I didn't want her to feel like I'm bringing somebody into the house to watch her. I wanted her to see this woman as somebody who was just there to hang out with her. And so I found a lady that we agreed I was going to pay her X amount of dollars. I couldn't really pay by the hour, but then we agreed I was going to pay her X number of dollars. I would pay her bi-weekly, every 2 weeks, this much money, and she's going to come by 10:30, no later than 11, to make sure my mother didn't leave the house, and she will make sure she had her lunch, she had her snack. So I told her, it's okay if you want to leave the house, if you want to run some errands, if you want to do grocery shopping, if you want to go to the park, to coffee shop, whatever, take her with you. So she uses that as an outing for herself. But don't leave her alone in the house. Great. That worked. I was really comfortable going to work. So a couple of months after she started coming to watch for my mother, one day I forgot something in the house. I can't exactly remember what it was right now, whether it was a charger for my computer itself, or a binder that I needed for the afternoon. So I decided I was going to come back home for my lunch break, and my lunch break starts 11. It's from 11 to 11:45. So I decided I was going to come then to pick up stuff. So I would drive 10 minutes in and 10 minutes back. So 20 minutes round trip. I wouldn't have time to eat lunch, but that was fine. So I came home maybe 11:15 by the time I arrived at my house, and the lady wasn't there. I asked my mother, where is she? And my mother said nobody came. My mother was there, content, watching cartoons. And I thought, nobody came. It's past 11. And I thought maybe something happened to her. So I called her and she answered. She said, oh, I just went to the Tim Hortons, in the neighborhood to pick up coffee. So I said, I am here, but I need to go to work. Can you please hurry up? So she hurried up, she came, and I ran to work. When I came back that afternoon, I told her, listen, I told you, this really makes me uncomfortable. Like I told you, it's okay to take her with you. She's mobile. She can outwalk you, outrun you. So take her with you wherever you're going. Even if you have an appointment, she will be more than content to sit in the waiting room for you while you did your appointment. If you need to do grocery shopping, feel free to be mobile with her because I wanted her to be active too. But please do not leave her alone. She said, great, I will not do that again. I apologize. It won't happen again. So I said, okay. But I was really, really feeling uncomfortable and worried. I remember talking to a coworker and telling them the situation, and the coworker telling me, maybe you should have a camera inside your house, the living room, the kitchen, outside the main door, so you know when somebody is coming in and when somebody is leaving. I thought about it, but I just thought that would really erode whatever trust we had on each other. I didn't want this woman to feel I hired her to watch my mother, but I'm watching her at the same time. So I thought, I'm not going to do that. One day, I just retrieved my phone after I finished teaching, maybe around 3 o'clock, and I had a bunch of messages, texts, and voice messages from a friend that we're close, but we don't really call each other all the time. We often call each other when there is a need for us to call each other. So I thought, why is she calling me? And I listened to my messages and she says, where are you? That's her first message. And I said, she knows I work during the day. What does she mean, where are you? And then the next message that we have your mother, she said you were with her. She was in the mall by herself. Nobody's with her. She's confused. Are you off today? And on and on. And I called that friend back and I said, what is going on? So she said around 11:50, almost 12 o'clock, my friend and I were at the mall. We saw your mother walking up and down the main aisle of the mall, and she was confused, and we asked her what she was doing there, and she told us you were with her and you left her there and she didn't know where you went. And that's when we called you, and when you didn't pick up the phone, after 2 or 3 times, we realized you were probably teaching and wouldn't get the phone. And we decided we were going to take her to my house. But as we were leaving, a lady so-and-so, and she knew this woman, came and told us she was watching your mother and she was with her. So she took your mother with her, but that's what happened. But there was solid 2 hours we were in the mall shopping and your mother was all by herself. Just make sure you know that. So I drive out to the lady's house and I say, what happened? And as you can imagine, I was a bit ticked off because we talked about leaving her already at the beginning when I hired her. And then again, we talked about this after she had that Tim Hortons run, which I didn't really think she went to Tim Hortons, but I took it at the face value at the time. I thought, now looking back at the time that second situation happened, looking back, I think maybe she was just coming to my house at that time. Anyway, so I asked her what happened, but this lady got so upset with me that I was questioning her. She said, these ladies are lying. We have to drive over there right now, and I am going to confront them in front of you. I only went to the bathroom. Your mother was waiting for me in front of the bathroom. These ladies came and took your mother, and they took her because they just wanted to create situations for me. I need to confront them right now. We're going to go over to her house and battle it out. She went off the deep end with me. And I said, listen, we are not going to confront anybody. We are not going to battle it out with anybody. Thank you very much for watching my mother for me for the last few months. But clearly, we cannot come to an agreement about how and what way to watch my mother. So what I will do is thank you very much. You are not going to be working for me anymore. Your services are not needed by me anymore. I am going to calculate how many days of this month you were working for me, and tomorrow after work I'm going to bring your fee for however many days you work in the month, and you are free from my services, and I thank you very much. And I'm not going to go confront anybody else, and I'm not going to go with you to somebody else's house. I'm grateful they found my mother when they found her. Thank you very much. I took my mother and I went home, and just like that, I was back in square one, trying to find a caregiver, trying to find somebody who spoke her language had proven to be quite difficult. When you listen to how we arrived at my mother's diagnosis and what followed, it's so easy to see her just as the patient, to see her as nothing more than the disease that reduced her to shell of her old self. But I want to also to tell you about my mother, the person, the fierce woman that told her stories unapologetically, celebrating the beautiful parts and harsh realities equally. I want to share with you the stories she told us about her life as a girl growing up in a small village, the tales that marked her adulthood. I want to share with you all her losses and the ultimate winnings. Following is one of those stories reconstructed from my childhood memory. In her father's absence, Timira's mother fell into a perpetual motion. She moved between the cooking shed and their tin room without aim. When is Abba coming? It had been over 2 hours since Timira's father left with the 2 police officers and the elder. The image of the 2 officers on either side of him, their steps synchronized, flashed back into Mira's mind. They moved slow and steady. They seemed to measure their strides with her father's as if they needed to be ready to catch him before he fell to the ground and dissolved into the loose brown earth. How long before he brings Isaac? Timira asked. Soon, child, her mother said without showing any frustration for her asking the same question repeatedly. Timira left her mother and went to the large tree in the middle of the yard where the other children, including her middle brother Farah, played kick the can game, but she didn't join them. Instead, she stood there watching the laneway that led into the camp. She was the first to see her father. Walking between the elder and the 2 officers, he came through the main camp entrance. He carried something wrapped in a white sheet. His gaze fixed on the distance, he didn't seem to see her. Abo! Timira yelled and ran toward him. Where is Isaac? She'd expected to hear his cry before she saw him. Her father pulled away from her, pulling the thing wrapped in the white sheet closer against his chest. He said nothing. Abba, what's going on? Timira needed her father to answer her question, explain away the confusion and chaos that engulfed them, but he didn't have the chance. Soon, her mother was upon them. Why do you have these? Timira's mother reached for the beaded bracelets in her father's hands. Isaac was only 2. He wasn't supposed to part with them, not until he was 6 years old. Without them, who would protect him from the evil eye? Timira's mother pulled the bracelets out of her father's hands and the yarn ripped. Beads flew everywhere, pieces scattered on the ground beneath their feet. Her mother bent down and collected every single bead before she stood up. Give me my child. She demanded the white bundle. "Give me my child," she repeated, even though the thing was too small to be Isaac. A little over 2 years old, Isaac was too tall and chubby to fit in the small bed of her father's arms. "You don't need to see it." Timir's father turned sideways away from her mother. "There is nothing for you to see here." He moved back, away from her, away from Timiro. "Nothing. Give it here." Timir's mother wasn't crying. She didn't seem scared or sad. Her voice didn't falter or shake with the raw emotion that filled her father's face. "Now, Snina, take the children inside." He pointed to Timiro and Farah. "They don't need to see this. You don't need to see this." Timiro began to cry now. Farah joined her. Neither her mother nor her father seemed to hear them. "Listen to your husband." By this time, the woman from the camp had gathered around Timira's mother, speaking to her in gentle tones. She reached and lifted the bundle out of Timira's father's arms. This time, he didn't stop her. She took the bundle and let it rest on her left arm before she opened it with her right hand. No one moved or blinked. It seemed every single person was holding their breath. Even Farah and Timiro stopped crying, waiting for the revelation. Timiro's mother's eyes opened wide, growing in size. She gasped once, only once, a deep and agonizing sound that stayed with Timiro decades after she'd heard it. The taxi, the 7-day mourning period, a time after the burial of the deceased, set aside for the family to mourn, to feel their loss, and to move to acceptance, began. In the village, the deceased, usually ill or elderly, the taxi was almost as festive as birth or wedding ceremonies. Dishes reserved for a special occasion, rice, goat and lamb meat, wild fruit, bread, and cakes were served. The family installed under the qura tree in the village square felt the loss but took comfort in the notion their loved one was not in pain anymore. Only Timiro and her family couldn't feel that same solace. Neither sick nor old, they had lost the baby. That was strange happening in this strange land. No one could explain this loss. Not even the elder had words to offer the family. This was not their time to lose, not their time to face such tragedy. It should have happened to someone else, to some other unlucky family tossed asunder. The women in the camp did their best to cook the same elaborate dishes for Timiro's family for the entire week. But Timiro noticed they didn't go near her parents, didn't approach them, didn't ask them anything directly. Instead, they spoke in loud whispers of what happened to her brother. Their solemn voices reverberated throughout the camp. Why such pain was inflicted upon her family, many asked. Timiro couldn't remember who uttered it first, one of her friends, Sadia or Ambia, or one of the women. But the idea of a curse on her family took hold on day 3. Once it began, the word grazed everyone's lips. Why else would this child be taken in such a fashion? One person or another would ask, if it were not a curse on his family. Each supposition hurt worse than the one that preceded it. Even people in the houses near the camp gave the family their condolences. They told them how sorry they were something so horrific had happened to them. But their motives for this visit seemed to run much deeper. They often delivered stories within the disguise of paying their respect. I heard he'd been killed as a sacrifice to pray for a childless couple. One of the women from the neighboring homes reported, "It's true, I heard about it at the market just now." She put her groceries on the ground near where Timira's mother sat on a stool next to her father, Farah and Timira on a mat between them. Timira's mother turned to the woman with eyes that seemed to say, "You're lying." "I'm not the only one." The woman lifted her grocery bag off the ground. "That's all you will hear. You could go now to the market and hear it for yourself." Timur's mother didn't go to the market since they'd buried Isaac. She wasn't going now. The woman must have known that. "Everywhere I went, the meat shops, the milk corner, and the vegetable stores, people have nothing on their tongue but your child." Timiro wished this woman would leave them alone, but she didn't. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said. Maybe that's why he cried so much. Maybe he knew the end was near. She lifted her back up as if ready to leave, but couldn't because Timiro's mother hadn't acknowledged her. "You must be devastated." The gaping wound left behind by the unimaginable and brutal loss was widened by the stories that swirled around Timira and her family. Devastated was an understatement. Timira's family was unmoored. Her father would get up intermittently as if he couldn't remain seated. He'd lumber about the yard, his legs wobbling beneath his large frame, mumbling something about failing his child, and asking himself loud enough why he came here, bringing his family to this evil land. But he couldn't stay away either. Soon he'd limp back to the seat as if the weight of the guilt bore down on him. "I should have fought to keep him," he'd said more than once, even though he didn't sound like he intended for others to hear. "You tried," Timira's mother would say. "I know you did." She looked at him with the kindest gaze Timira had ever seen before or ever since. "You have the long fingernail scratch from the navel to the chin to prove it." Not hard enough, he would only shake his head. The news of the charge came 2 weeks from the day the family buried Isaac, or what remained of him. They'd heard whispers of the arrest the day her father collected Isaac from the morgue, but none of it made sense, not the way the gossip mouths carried. A mother and her son have been charged. A new plainclothes officer brought the news to Timira's parents. "A mother and a son took my child?" Her father stared at his hands, and I couldn't hold on. "I am sorry." The officer sounded surprised, as if he didn't expect to encounter such a level of grief. "They would hurt no one else." "I want to see them," Timur's mother demanded. "Speak to them." "A court date will be set shortly," the officer said. "You will see them in court." "I want to ask them, why my child? Why my Isaac?" "They'll have to answer those questions for the court." "How about me? This is my child, not the court's child." "I'm sorry." The officer apologized for the second time. "It won't be too long." "It's already been too long," Timir's mother said. "Thank you for letting us know." Her father stood up and extended his hand to the man. "Don't mind my wife. She's hurt." "I understand." The officer shook Timir's father's hand for a long minute. "Your family will get justice." "Justice?" Her mother dismissed officer with that one word. "Come with me." She took Timira by the hand and pulled her toward their tin room. "Let me wash and fix your hair." That was a sign that something was amiss. Out of her grief, she wanted to wash and fix Timira's hair. True, her braids were unraveling, her hair in a desperate state. But for her mother to make that her first act of rejoining life was a sign Timira could only recognize much later. Timira pulled away from her mother. "Why?" "Because you are a mess." "Her hair can wait," Timira's father said. "Don't mind her hair. You need to rest." "No, it can't wait." Her mother spoke with desperation. "I need to do it now." "Maybe after you rest," her father said. "You can deal with it then." "No, I can't. People are coming to see us." Timira's father's voice cracked. And say what? Indeed. For them to tell me one reason or another why my son is gone? Timira's father lowered his gaze and said nothing more. To point out the curse inside me, her mother pulled Timira's hand again. This time, Timira didn't resist. My mother, the person and the patient, can be found in all your favorite podcast apps. Please do not forget to listen, like, share, and follow. And join me next week as I share with you another episode of my mother's journey as both the person and the patient. Thank you.